Hey guys, this is Joe with Agumon for Smash Bros. I'm pretty beat after a wonderful convention. G-Fest was a blast. I'll post some stuff about it, maybe some videos later, but I wanted to address a comment that I got on the DeviantArt group from a user, and I wanted to do this in probably the most respectful way because I actually want to address their concerns, and I'm pretty impressed with the things that they came up with because these are things I've yet to see other people, I guess, talk about as far as the whole Agumon for Smash Brothers thing goes, and I'm just really impressed that someone else has thought about this because I've been waiting for someone to make these assessments and make these comments so I could address them. And what they said was, and I'm going to read this, hopefully I don't mess up because I'm slightly dyslexic, is Agumon won't get in Smash. Digimon is a toy franchise, not a game franchise. I love Digimon, don't misunderstand. I'd love to eat my words, but it's pretty pointless. Japan doesn't even care about the whole Digimon versus Pokemon thing like we do. Now I'm going to try and address this in the most respectable way possible. I'm only responsible for what I say, not how people receive it, and I don't want Maxi Marauder of DeviantArt to assume that I'm trying to insult him. But instead, I'm going to just address his concerns the best way I can because I've personally been waiting for someone to say this because I've had this, I guess, counterpoint set up for a while, and I'm just really impressed that he thought of it first and no one else hasn't yet. And it's a little confusing that no one else has asked these questions of me yet. So I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers. I'm just going to address them the best I can. I'm going to start out by addressing his first sentence, which is Agumon won't get in Smash. Now, with being as respectable as possible, I'm just going to come out and say that's a highly pretentious comment. If you had told me 3 or 4 years ago that Ryu would make it in Smash Brothers, I would have thought you were crazy. No one decides this. No fan has any skivvy on this. No fan has the right to tell another fan that this is how it is. And the reason being that I believe that there's maybe a handful of characters that are 100% confirmed never going to make it in Smash Brothers as of, I guess, the current state of things now. We don't know where the video game industry is going to be in 10 years. So we can't say that this will never happen. This is incredibly pretentious. And it's like saying that we'll never invent a shuttle that'll take us to Mars, or we'll never invent a way to travel back in time, or we'll never invent airplanes that run on water or something. It's really pretentious. There were people, and I guess it's fine because like the Wright brothers dealt with stuff like this as far as people telling them they'll never fly and things like that. I really don't get upset by this, but I do like to address the pretentiousness of this, and it's something that I would like to see maybe the entire fandom sway away from telling each other who can and can't make it in Smash Brothers, just because it is pretentious. Like I said, I have what I would consider a small handful of characters that will never make it in there. Don't ever expect to see Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal or or Master Chief because they represent other consoles, rival consoles. So, but that's just what that is. We don't, like I said, we don't know where video games are going to be in 10 years. So we can't even really say that that anyone will never ever 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 make it in Smash Brothers. So I just want to address the pretentiousness of that, and I like I said, I don't think that it's necessarily a notch against Maxi Marauder as a person because he said it, because he's one of about 10 trillion billion zillion million people out there that say this. So I'm going to just move on to the next one. Digimon is a toy franchise, not a game franchise. Now this one is something that I've waited and waited so long for someone to address. Sorry folks, video games are toys, and I'm sorry that that really offends people because video games are art and they're this and they're that, and it's like they're cinematic experiences, but they're still enjoyable and they're still fun, and there's still things that give you a certain kind of feeling that only a toy can. To say that video games are not toys are an insult to toys and an insult to video games. And I expect a lot of hate for saying this because the people look at it as like it's just a degradation of the thing they like, and it simply isn't. Video games as a hobby is still as good as collecting figures. if it brings you joy in the way that only a game or and video games are games which are akin to toys. Playing is an incredible, powerful part of life, and to believe that playing is wasting time, or to assume that we need to justify the things we enjoy by saying they're experiences, not fun, playful things, it is like spitting in the eye of human psychology. To play, to have joy, to have fun is intricate to good mental health. We play games and we do enjoyable things because it's good for us and it helps us for life. It prepares us. Look at the animal kingdom. Animals play to teach them how to hunt and how to survive. It's intricate. Our closest living relatives, as far as animals go, the apes, are just always playing and goofing around. It's not a bad thing to play. Playing and enjoying toys and enjoying things like video games and such are is not something of a sign of immaturity. And this is something that maybe I'm getting a little deep with this, and this is probably going to annoy people more than anything, but it's the truth. Nintendo and Bandai are both toy companies. Nintendo started out as a company that sold Hanafuna cards, and Bandai is still a toy company. Bandai is part of the Namco crew right now, who the people who develop Smash Brothers. Bandai is sorely represented in crossover games, as far as ones that Namco Bandai crossover with other companies with, such as Project Cross Zone. There's only like a few Bandai characters in there, and that's kind of sad. It really is. Like Super Robot Wars characters and Dot Hack characters, and other than that, Capcom, Namco, and Sega all have far more characters in the games. I just think Bandai as a cultural force is sorely underrepresented in the Western video game or crossover video game market. Not so much in the Japanese one. But that being stated, they're both toy companies. It was the inclusion of Rob in the NES that saved video games from the crash. Rob was a toy. They sold the NES as a toy. It's always meant to be a toy. But toys can be complex. They can be deep. They can be experiences. They can be life-changing things. They really can. And they're good for you, and they're not a sign of immaturity, and they're not something that's bad. So video games are toys. So I don't see the clear distinguishing factor in this, especially since I'm holding a Charizard amiibo right now, which is a toy that goes into a video game. So that logic right there it's sound at first glance, but I don't think it really holds water in the end. But I do like that it has been addressed, and I'm happy that someone's finally brought it up. The next thing that he said was, I'm going to skip over when he says, I love Digimon, don't misunderstand, and he'd love to eat his words, but it's pretty pointless. There's been people who have been floating out in the middle of the ocean for weeks and weeks and weeks, and thinking, if I swim in this direction or I swim in that direction, doesn't matter, it's pretty pointless. And I've seen plenty of survival stories to find out that every once in a while, those people that do swim in one direction eventually find something and get saved. To say it's pretty pointless is another pretentious comment, but I don't want to address that one too much because it's not really a deep opinion, so to say, as his next comment, which is one I've just been waiting for people to bring up, and that's Japan doesn't even care about the whole Digimon Pokemon thing like we do. I could beg to differ on that. I could look at Pixiv to see all the Pokemon and Digimon crossover art. More so than the whole, like, who would win in a fight thing. I think Japan embraces the crossover culture far more than we do. To say that they don't care about it as much as us is really short-sighted and kind of shows a certain lack of understanding for the culture. Project Cross Zone isn't the first like really big Japanese crossover game that existed. The company Banpresto that kind of I guess, spearheaded the whole Project Cross Zone thing to begin with, pretty much makes a good deal of money off of nothing but crossover games. I mean, they do other games, but their Super Robot War games are just crossover, 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 crossover. Capcom has crossed over so many times with other things. It's insane. To say that Japan doesn't care about crossovers, which is essentially what the comment he's saying. Maybe I get what he's saying, that they don't have the who would win in a fight mentality that Americans have, the kind of chest bumping, saber rattling thing, is entirely valid. However, there's plenty of art and comments and Japanese people who would back me up on this when they say that the crossover aspect is just as strong, if not far more stronger. They want to see this happen, probably for different reasons, maybe. But to say that Japan doesn't dig crossovers is wrong, wrong, wrong. Every year they release a new Kamen Rider movie that is nothing but last year's Kamen Rider crossing over with this year's Kamen Rider. Some of their most profitable films have been movies where it's, Kamen Rider crossover with Super Sentai. The Pre-Cure series is always crossing over with each other. Past seasons of different things, Yu-Gi-Oh! And crossover with older seasons. And the whole crossover thing is so strong in Japan. It has always been a powerful force over there. And especially in the video game market. It's so much stronger there than anywhere else. The Battle Soccer games were like the precursor to Smash Brothers. They were the earliest example of massive franchise crossovers. The Battle Soccer games were like the only crossover game to ever have Godzilla characters in it. So to say that crossovers aren't a big part of Japan is entirely wrong, in a really like naive way, I guess. And I don't discredit anyone for thinking that. They're not wrong. He's especially not wrong when he's saying that the whole combative nature of the concept isn't quite as strong over there. But the crossover thing is so much more powerful. King Kong versus Godzilla was a huge deal in Japan. It was arguably the first real big crossover over there. And it was America versus Japan. It was a huge, huge deal. By inflation, it's one of the most successful films of all time. I mean, if you compare it to what it made back then to what money's worth now, it was nuts the amount of money it made. It was insane. It was a big deal. I would say that crossovers in America are far less important than in Japan, but to go and address the whole idea that just because something's not popular in Japan, that it'll never make it in Smash Brothers, is another pretentious thought process, simply because Punch-Out wasn't ever really that big in Japan. Some Punch-Out games did well, but Punch-Out has mostly been a big our US Nintendo franchise as far as popularity goes. I'm not going to say that it's ever been super, super, duper, duper, duper mega popular anywhere, but Little Mac was kind of treated in Smash Brothers as the US character. Not that he started out as a US character, not that he is a US character, but because it is this popular in America franchise. If we were to put characters in Smash Brothers just because they were popular in Japan versus whether they were popular in America, I guess we'd probably see a lot of zany characters that we never even knew existed making it in there. So that alone is kind of vapor as far as that logic goes. But once again, I really want to overstate that I'm kind of happy this guy brought it up. I don't mean to insult him at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just addressing his concerns. And I'm not into debating. I'm not into arguing. But if he wants to say something else to any of this, or try to address this in a way that I guess maybe dislodge some of my comments, he's welcome to. I welcome it with open arms. I'm not going to say that I'm going to engage this any longer, just because I think I said what I've needed to say, but I love getting feedback like this. I really don't mind these more, I hate to say this, but more negatively driven, or just concerns in general, uh, or concerned comments. But it is what it is. So I hope that I could have addressed what he's saying, and uh, I mean, I guess I could have said back with the whole it's a toy franchise thing that the general mentality is still there. Remember reading somewhere that Pokemon makes more money from its merchandise and its toys than it does from its actual games. So that's another thing to consider, is that Nintendo right now, especially with the whole licensing thing, realizes that toys are probably more profitable at this point than video games. So, I mean, I could go on forever, but I'm just going to try and end this here. I want to thank everyone who's watched this. I want to thank Maxi Marauder for making this comment. And if he has anything else to say, I'd love to read it. And I guess until the next video, guys, I'll see you around.